But for all the people who have been following the righteous path through their life, who have been doing the right things, who have been following the teachings of the Vedas, they have two potential paths to get to. And those paths are called the path, the Devayana path and the Pitrayana path. The Devayan path or the path of gods is the path of light. Now, interesting thing here is that the action being done by people whose consciousness follows either of these paths is exactly the same. Okay, righteous actions being done that are in line with what scriptures tell us to do. Okay, but the bhav is different. For those who have whose motivation for those good actions is actually is their self benefit, why they are doing this to acquire some desire or the other, whatever be those desires, then they will follow the path of ancestors or the path, the Pitrayana path. And this is called this it is called so and they refer to it as a path of smoke, that of night time, that of a dark fortnight, right? Why is it called so? It is because in this particular case, there is no clarity to the person. He is plunged in darkness of ignorance. He is in ignorance because he thinks that the maximum benefit that he can achieve are the things that are in this material world. He regards the material world as real. He regards Maya as real, and he aspires to do the best within this Maya, and that is the only thing he wants to get to. Okay, and he may achieve the highest felicity of the heaven, but ultimately this path reverts you back to the human form because you have not gotten out of the cycle. So that path of suffering, the non-stop cycles will start all over again. But the people who do the same set of righteous actions with only one bhav, ananya bhav, with the bhakti, the devotion to the Lord, and their only goal is self-realization, that is called the path of the gods, the path that is illuminated by fire, by light, by daytime, the bright fortnight. It is called so because this person has the wisdom. What is this light about? What is this? The day, the light, the fire. That is the fire or the light of wisdom. The wisdom to discern what is right, what is wrong, being able to discern what is real, what is unreal. And these people, because they have that wisdom, they are able to go for the right thing. So they only aspire to the God's realization, and hence their consciousness will follow the path of the gods and will never revert back. They achieve moksha, they achieve the Lord. You achieve what you aspire to, whatever you've been thinking about. So if you've been thinking about the God realization, you will achieve him, and after that there is no reversion back to the world. Okay, and even though it may say stuff like you know, those who die when they, you know, during daytime or during the bright fortnight and all of those things, it doesn't really mean that in physical terms. You can die at whatever time. This, all of this depends on our state of consciousness, and only that state of consciousness will then determine which path we will follow or what we will realize. And as has been said again and again in this chapter, the only way, whatever path your consciousness takes, is determined by what your consciousness has been indulging in for all the years before, whatever has become subconscious to it, whatever has become habitual to it through constant abhyas yoga, through constant practice. And that is why it is important for us to do swadhyay, nam jap, satsang, and constant manan and nidhi dhyasan. Okay, that is why, because this practice, without this practice yoga, without this abhyas yoga, we will never find the right, our consciousness will never elevate to that level that we can take the Devayana path. Okay, so we had completed till Shloka 26. And what was very clearly told in Shloka 26 was that only these two paths are available after death. Only these two paths. There is no third path here. Okay. And so if we remember that, see, actions are going to be the same anyway. Your actions are not going to change. So if your actions are going to be are not going to change, the only thing that you control is your inner world. then you might as well do the right thing, no, in your inner world. That's completely in your control. To be able to get to the highest attainment that is possible through the same set of effort, through the same set of actions. This is what we call the Vyavasaitmika Buddhi, the business-like intellect that knows where is my best return on investment. Yeah. We'll start with Shlok 27. Vijay, you'll read with us.
The Lord now speaks of the gain in knowing the two parts, their eternal nature.
Yeah, the music is different for the two. Nate Sriti Parthajanan.
Nate Sriti Parthajanan.
Yogi Muhyati Kaschana.
Yogi Muhyati Kaschana.
Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu.
Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu.
Yoga Yukto Bhavarjuna.
Yoga Yukte to Bhavarjuna.
Nate is na iti. Na is no, iti in dono, and Sriti is margo ko. So by no, these two margs, Janan is knowing the essence. So Parth, knowing the essence of these two marg is what the sentence is. Muhyati does get deluded. Kaschan, anyone. Tasmat is because of this. Sarveshu, all. Kaleshu, times. Yoga Yukto Bhavarjuna, remain connected to the Lord Arjun.
The yogi who knows these two paths is never deluded. Therefore, at all times, O Arjuna, be steadfast in yoga. The Lord's command to be a yogi. In this shloka, commanding Arjuna to be a yogi. Even while performing the duties in the world, the Lord says that the knowledge of these two paths would induce an awareness of divine at all times. Being steadfast in yoga does not mean the state of perfection, but indicates aspiring and striving for perfection. Every moment of life meant to be used for being steadfast in yoga. Even moment of carelessness may mean not only it is waste, but it also result in loss of highest gain in life.
So here there are three things, right? So the first is the two paths here refer to what Tuvina said, the path of the light and the path of the darkness. The path of the light is the path of unison, where we merge back to Him, right? And the path of darkness essentially refers to us having to come back to this world to clean our sansar, to face our own prarabdha, right? Now, what does this mean from a practical purpose? From a practical purpose, it essentially means that when we are going through a particular situation, when we are going through a particular toughness, challenge, it's not about asking why me. It's asking about what do I have to learn from this? Why is this coming to me specifically? What is it trying to tell me? Right? That's the difference. That is Gyan. That is the knowledge. That is the faith. That's the only reason why we experience things in life. Right? So it's the same analogy, right? Like when you say, pray to God, oh, please give me patience. I am very short-tempered. I need to be able to deal with things better so that I don't hit my child or I don't yell at my wife, right? What will God do? He will just give you more situations in which to practice that patience. And in all those situations, you will probably fail 50% of the times, right? But each situation is only a method for you to keep sharpening your own practice. And that is what the second part of this shloka refers to, is as long as we are focused on striving to be better, not expecting perfection from us, he's only expecting our commitment to constantly work on ourselves. Not the perfection that, oh my God, I was supposed to do something and I didn't do it, I'm such a bad person. That is not the conversation, right? It's this element of striving, it's this element of always wanting to be better. That is what it means to be on the path of life. You're working towards that outcome.
And striving denotes not just a desire, right? It actually denotes active working, active action towards realizing that desire also. Just by thinking about like, oh, I want to A, I want to B, I want to C, doesn't really cut it. Right? Ultimately, that desire has to translate into action also. So striving determines both those things. There is an intent and then there is an action. So our direction of travel is determined by two things, not just the direction, but like the how fast or the path of that direction takes. One is the intent, and the second is intensity of effort. So intent has to be there, and then it has to be followed by intensity of effort. Right? That intensity of effort is super, super, super important. We can't emphasize that enough number of times. And the only person who controls this is ourselves. Okay. Kay, will you read with us?
Yeah, sure. Connection. Sometimes it is thought that perhaps a huge stockpile of merit would be built by assiduous study of the scriptures, or by performing rituals, or by suffering physical tortures, or by giving large donations. It is true that these help in earning merit, but the highest gain is attainment of self-realization. The Lord says,
Vedeshu yagyeshu tapassu chaiva
Vedeshu yajneshu tapashu chaiva
daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam
daneshu yat punya palam pradishtam
atyeti tat sarvamidam viditva
atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva
yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam.
yogi param sorry, last one again.
Yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam.
Yogi param sthanam upaiti chatyam.
Vedeshu is that of the Vedas, or by following the study of the by following the teachings of the Vedas. Yagyeshu refers to that of by observing yagya, or following the rituals. Tapasu is observing austerities. Daneshu is by giving donations, doing dan. Yat purna phalam, attaining the fruits. Pradishtam is said to be. Atyeti goes way beyond. Tat sarvamidam is by realizing the tattva gyan, by realizing the essence of the gyan, essence, the most essential knowledge. Viditva, knowing properly. Param sthanam upaiti. Sthanam is the param sthanam, parampad, the ultimate benefit, the ultimate resting place. Upaiti, प्राप्त होता है, attains. Chadyam, cha is and, adyam is eternal state.
Realizing this profound truth, the yogi transcends the rewards as laid down in the scriptures to be gained by the study of the Vedas, performance of rituals, observing austerities, and giving donations, and instead attains the supreme.
So here, right? So he makes this clearer over and over again, that everything we do for striving and aspiring to be better are tools for us to reach our higher state. They're not tools for us to get attached to. And that's the big difference. It's like a pole vault person, right? A pole vault person, when he runs with that stick is really important for him to vault above the high bar. Without that, he's never going to reach that high. But if he gets attached to that pole, he will never also cross the bar. So when he reaches the highest point with that pole, the person has to leave the bar and jump across. And that's what this shloka is kind of telling us, that while we work on striving and aspiring to become better versions of ourselves, all of these are just tools for us to reach our highest self. That is the goal. These are all mediums. Don't get attached to a particular medium. If you're not able to do something like Tuna had mentioned, right, a couple of weeks ago in the class, that she didn't have a counter, so she couldn't do the Mrityunjay job, right? But that counter is just a tool to do the job. You can't get attached to that counter, then these things will come in very subtly. So this is a very deep point, but he's brought it in from a subtle perspective, just because in the previous line or the previous shloka, he's talked about striving for perfection. But he's saying, don't get attached to the results, don't get attached to the tools that are helping you there. Eventual goal should be one.
Also, we've now learned about the two paths, right? The Pitrayan path and the Devayan path, Devayana path. Now, in both of them, you will do all of these activities, right? You will do yagya, you will do tap, you will do dan, you will learn the scriptures, you will follow the scriptures activities, and you will develop a heap of meritorious actions. Correct. The person who understands that there are these two paths available will go beyond those the results of these meritorious deeds. So he will stop, because now he knows, he has the knowledge that I do not want to be attached to this lower level of returns that I can get through these actions. And he would strive for the higher end. So he goes beyond, that's what they are saying, right? He goes past the material results that accrue from these four activities. He will go past that too, and he will set his eyes only at the highest goal. And how will he do that? By changing the bhav, the intent behind his actions. So the intent behind his actions is not to please a deity. It is not to gain, he won't just work hard because he wants a certain promotion. He won't be doing certain right things because he wants name and fame in his community, or he wants to be loved by somebody, right? You are now going to do it only for the love of the Lord, to only attain him. That's how your intent will change. Your actions will remain the same, meritorious, righteous actions in line with the conjunctions of Vedas.
Continue.
The highest goal, the supreme state. There is no doubt that by acquiring thorough knowledge of scriptures, or by observing austerities, or by performance of rituals, or by giving donations, a very powerful and glorious position and even heavenly pleasures can be attained. But self-realization is the highest goal and is the supreme state to be attained. In preference to the position of even the highest heavenly felicity, the span of human life is meant for being utilized for self-realization. If this is done, the thraldom of the cycle of births and deaths is escaped forever.
Awesome. I have just now posted on our group what we typically say at the end of a chapter. Okay? So, Kay, since you finished the chapter, would you like to read it? Do you have access to your WhatsApp?
Yeah.
Do you want me to read it and then you will read it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it together. Okay.
Okay.
Om Tat Siddhiti.
Om Tat. Can't hear that. Sorry.
Om Tat Siddhiti.
Om Tat Sattati.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita Shu.
Upanishatsu.
Upnishatsu
Brahma Vidyayam
Brahma Vidyayam
Yoga Shastre
Yoga Shastre
Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade
Sri Krishna Arjun Sambade
Akshar Brahma Yogo Nam
Aksha Brahma Yogona
Ashtamo Adhyayah
Ashtamo Adhyayah
Hari Om Tat Sat Hari Om Tat Sat Hari Om Tat Sat. Now we'll start chapter 9.
Divina, I have one question. Do you have the closing shloka in English as well?
In English, no. I mean, it is written. The meaning of that is, oh, okay, in English wording.
Yeah.
Don't have it anywhere. I'll see if I can find one and I'll send that across.
Okay, thank you.
Rina,
Yeah.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said that do actions for the love of the Lord. Is that also not a ego or a condition I am attaching to the action which I am doing?
Absolutely. It is. It is. See, the way the world works, right? The Maya. We are in a state of Maya, correct? We are a part of Maya. Maya is ruled by certain laws, and you cannot operate out of those laws. You have to operate within those laws. That framework applies to all of us, including the deities that we have talked about, whether it is Ganesha ji, whether it is Mahesh, Brahma, Vishnu. Everybody is ruled by those laws of the nature that Bhagwan ji has laid down. Desire is a part of that law. The way it works is that we work for desires. It is a motivating factor. Now, some of these motivating factors or these desires could be intrinsic, could be extrinsic, right? So we know at the very least, even in the material world, extrinsic motivations are far less going to carry us forward compared to the intrinsic motivations. Now, here in Gita, we talk about the quality of your intrinsic motivation. If the quality of your intrinsic motivation is what do you call it, transient, right, because it is connected to the material world, it is going to create material or a transient results. But if the quality of your desire is eternal, right, if your desire is for Bhagwanji, then it's a good desire. You cannot get rid of a desire. It's like saying, oh, I want to get rid of thoughts. The thoughts don't go away. Okay, so desire is always going to be there. You have to transcend it, you have to transmute it, so that that desire becomes the one desire that is worth it. And that desire is the love of God, or the desire for self-realization, or the desire for moksha. Definitely a desire. Definitely a desire, because we are part of the nature. Desires will always operate. Similarly, mind is chanchal, mind is movable, and mind has a way of holding on to things. Okay, so it is not going to suddenly let go of that nature of its. What is our intellect supposed to do? Our intellect is supposed to direct it away from the Maya to Bhagwanji, so that it holds, instead of what it has been doing, it has been holding on to Maya. Instead, now it holds on to Bhagwanji with the same intensity, with the same level of focus and concentration that it has been doing on the Maya. Okay, so if there's only one desire that we must hold on to, and we must direct our mind towards the feet of the Lord. Make sense? And nobody's ever said, if anybody says that Gita is about selflessness, is nothing far from the truth. It is a very selfish motive. The book is all about ourselves and our self-uddhar. At no point of time we are saying do uddhar of others. You're not doing anybody's uddhar. You're doing nobody's work. You are doing this for yourself and yourself alone. As you do this for yourself, as a side benefit, this is the way Bhagwanji has crafted. He's created this world in such a beautiful manner, and the laws are so beautiful that as you do your own uddhar, you will end up creating beautiful fragrance around you, which will create beauty for the people around you. But that's not your goal. It's just a natural side effect of your actions. You're not doing this for others. You're not doing sacrifice. You're not doing tap. You're not doing dan. You're not doing any of these things. You're not doing swadhyay for others. You're doing it only for yourself. There's nothing else about it. It's very selfish. My own uddhar. I'm doing this for myself. Be very clear about it. You're not doing this for others. Okay. So very, very selfish for sure. But it's one selfishness that is worth keeping. It is worth pursuing. Because this is what Bhagwanji has sent me here for. It's just that that concept of taking care of myself then translates into material things. And that's where it loses the connection with the Lord. And the moment it loses connection with the Lord, then that material type of selfishness actually ends up hurting people around us. But when we transmute that selfishness and we connect it to the Lord, the same selfishness will now create beautiful gifts for the world. Right? So we all come with gifts. And when we follow our destiny, we will, in the process, end up giving our gift to the world for the benefit of the world. Make sense? Okay. So we will start with chapter 9 today. This is the
So let me give you an example, right, of this thing that Tuhina's talking about. Is imagine you are a seed. Okay. A seed itself has nothing, no potential. It has a lot of potential, but it's got no value. The seed needs nurturing by soil, by water, by sunlight. A lot of elements come together for the seed to become a tree. Now, an apple tree or a mango tree takes 10 years before fruits are given. But for 10 years, it needs to be nurtured. It needs to be taken care of by human beings that are around, by the nature that is around, right? It's nurtured, it's taken care of, it becomes a big tree, it becomes a healthy tree. You protect it from pests and insects and everything else. Then it starts giving fruits. But the tree says, boss, these are my fruits. I'll choose who I give it to. So he starts hoarding the fruit. He doesn't let mangoes fall from its branches till it gets money or till it gets more things in return. It wants more. It wants access to more land. It wants to be a king of all the other trees. So it tells other mango trees what to do. So it doesn't give its fruits very freely. Now, it's because it stops dropping the fruits that it's meant to do, what happens? The fruit starts poisoning the branch where it came from. It starts poisoning the trunk that it came from because it's getting rotten. Right? They're no longer freely giving what they're meant to be giving. Right? And that's an example to what Tuhina is saying. That there are two elements to this. One, we've already taken a lot from sansar, and we have to be extremely grateful that we've reached this point of knowledge. Very, very grateful, because we've already taken way more than our share. The clothes we wear, we don't stitch. The house we wear, we cannot build. The food we eat, we cannot grow. Right? The life that we depend on when we get sick, we cannot cure. So we already are dependent and take a lot from the environment in terms of soil and water, from the tree example. Now, our only focus is to live with the right principles, give out the right fruits, and that will lead to our ultimate benefit. And it just crossed my mind, so I thought I'll share it.
Good example. So we'll start chapter 9 today. Chapter 9 is the heart of Gita. It's bang in the middle, guys. And this is where the most Bhagwanji is going to reveal his most important secrets. It's a very, very important chapter. And even in even with chapter 9, right in the middle of chapter 9, he's going to give us a very beautiful assurance. And we will come to it right at the heart of it. Okay. So it'll be a very, very interesting, very beautiful chapter. We'll start that now.
So I'll also set context that the chapter can become quite abstract. Okay, so I don't think I followed even 10% of it in the beginning, to be honest.
So chapter 7 and chapter 8 were abstract as well, if you choose to make it abstract. And chapter 9 is also going to be that, if you choose to make it abstract. End of the day, you have to, like we have talked about this in chapter 7 and chapter 8 as well. Everything that we will read right now will seem extremely esoteric and difficult to comprehend, difficult to understand if we are only applying it at the macro level, because our mind will simply not be able to grasp the enormity or the scale of it all. The only way to understand it is to remember that the whole world, the whole Srishti, the whole Brahmand is a hologram. As is outside, so is inside. So I have to understand these principles that are being talked about by connecting it to my me story, by connecting it to what it means for me today. What if I'm not able to connect it to my me story today? It's a wasted effort. You've not understood anything in that case. It's a great benchmark to use. Can I connect it to my daily story? Can I connect it to myself? If I can, then I've understood the principle well. If I cannot, and it seems like, oh, it's too far out, like, no, I don't need to understand it right now. If you're in that space, then know that you've not understood the principles. Time to go back, reread, re-understand, ask questions to clarify. Okay. So bring it down to your me story, bring it down to your inner life. Not like, we talk about certain things at the macrocosmic universal level, and that's okay. But imagine that universe playing out inside of you alone. That is your universe. You have to play it inside of yourself. Okay. We are that universe. We are that. This body is the Yuddh. Okay, Kurukshetra. Right. With that, we'll start chapter 9. Bhagishri, you'll read with us. So when we start a new chapter, we will invoke the new chapter with Paramatma ji. Okay? So just repeat after me. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha.
Om Shri Paramatmane Manaha.
Ath Navamo Adhyayah.
Ath Navamo Adhyayah.
Beautiful. Now you can read Raj Vidya, Raj Guhya Yoga. You want to explain first and then we do the reading, or we start?
Raj Vidya, Raj Guhya Yoga, the yoga of sovereign science and sovereign abstraction. Introduction. In the 7th chapter, the Lord had imparted to Arjuna the knowledge of direct perception and total perception. In the 8th chapter, the discussion was continued into the area of those divine faculties through which the one transcendence manifests himself in diverse forms. In that chapter, the Lord also revealed the path which led to realization of his supreme state. The individualized self in its human life becomes aware of the diversity of forms all around, with whom feelings of amity or hostility get established. A continuous succession of such human lives is wasted in fighting out the resulting effects. The life which could have been utilized more fruitfully in attaining eternal peace and enduring bliss goes completely waste. Most people thus remain ignorant of the current purpose of human life. Those who somehow get this awareness seldom achieve any results due to lack of correct guidance. This is the reason why in many people the wrong notion becomes fortified that perhaps attainment of perfection is extremely difficult or is beyond the reach of an ordinary human. They believe that even if an effort is made, it would take several births to yield the desired result. Refuting these wrong assumptions in this chapter, the Lord prepares to lay bare even the most abstract mysteries mysteries on the subject, so that may be an ordinary human being may be able to achieve the state of perfection in this very life. This chapter is therefore named The Yoga of Sovereign Science and Sovereign Abstraction.
So a few things here. So one is the context of this chapter. The context of this chapter is to uh, uh, help us realize that one, no matter ordinary human beings, you and me, can achieve self-realization in this life, right? So it's not something, we don't need special powers, we don't need special gifts. We all, in fact, in the next chapter, we'll be talking about the special gifts we all have received, which are all unique. We already have them, okay? Now, what is the core theme here is we understand that Bhagwan is Nirgun, right? Which is formless, shapeless, permanent, right? And we've discussed this in the class in the past, right? Our senses and our sense faculties can only perceive what our senses can engage with. We cannot hear or perceive supersonic sound. We cannot hear echolocation, which is the sound dolphins make. We need to rely on external instruments to be able to perceive them. We cannot see the Big Bang, but we have relied on the Hubble telescope to be able to perceive it. Right? So Bhagwanji is Nirgun. So we cannot, it's impossible for us to perceive it just through our senses. Right? Now this chapter name is Raja Vidya Rajaguya. Raja Vidya, Raja means king, right? Vidya means knowledge. So this chapter essentially highlights this is the king of knowledge. Now, what does that mean? Right? That there is actually no greater knowledge out there in the sansar. This knowledge trumps everything else we know from in this world. All right. So let's take a step back. And please stop me if I'm going too fast, or please feel free to ask questions, because we'll be covering a few things fairly quickly. How is knowledge consumed? Right now in our sansar, the only way we've learned is through our senses. We read something, or we listen to something, or we taste something, or we smell something, and we process that information as knowledge. We experience it and we make a judgment, and that becomes, or we memorize it and that becomes knowledge, right? But knowledge and you, because it's coming from sansar, are always two separate entities. So I may have studied 8 years to be a lawyer, but I have the knowledge to be a lawyer, but I'm never a lawyer. When I start practicing that knowledge, then I become the lawyer.
For that small specific point of time.
For that small specific time point.
You are practicing law in a court, you are a lawyer, but you don't become a lawyer as a person, as a being. Your being doesn't change. You acquire legal knowledge, right?
So, and knowledge, sansaric knowledge, necessarily becomes obsolete. It is never permanent.
Yeah, as with everything, right?
Laws keep changing. As laws keep changing, understanding keeps changing. As science discovers new facts, science keeps changing, right? Facts keep evolving. So everything keeps changing. Knowledge from sansar is always going to be temporary in nature, right? And there are endless branches and endless specializations of knowledge. And so for you to keep up with sansaric knowledge, you have to keep working at it. You have to keep finding the newest thing, right? And that's true for all of our professions, that we have to keep learning to stay relevant. Otherwise, very soon we'll become irrelevant. The world's moving way too fast, right? Now, that is sansaric knowledge. This knowledge, this information, this gyan that is given in this chapter is called Raja Vidya, which means it's the king of all knowledge. Now, what is the difference? This refers to self-knowledge, capital S, self-knowledge. Once you know this knowledge, you become that knowledge. It changes the core of your being.
You become that knowledge. That's the very big difference between worldly knowledge and the self-knowledge, the Raj Vidya. Sansaric Vidya versus Raj Vidya. Sansaric Vidya will always be separate from you. You acquire certain knowledge and it remains within. So there is a knower and there is a knowledge, right? And then there's a third thing about the process of knowing it. There are three parts to acquiring knowledge. There is an object of knowledge, there is a process of acquiring that knowledge, and then there is a knower. Three parts to acquiring a sansaric knowledge. In case of self-knowledge, in case of Rajvidya, the big difference is that the three aspects to this, once you acquire the knowledge, the acquirer, the process of acquiring and the acquired knowledge all become one. They don't remain separate. Once you acquire the knowledge of Bhagwan, you become Bhagwan. You acquire the knowledge of capital S self, you become capital S self. Even when you do puja archana of various deities, whether it is Ganesha, I'm using the example of Ganesha because Ganesha Chaturthi has just passed and it's at the top of my mind. But replace this with anything that you want, right? The whole idea is that when you do puja archana of Ganesha and you are really like you're really devoted to him, the ultimate benefit is that you become Ganesha. What does that mean? You acquire the qualities of Ganesha. Whatever you are praying to is not a person with like this elephant head and with these ears and everything, right? You become the qualities that are represented through Ganesha. What you are praying to becomes you. Huge difference between worldly knowledge and the knowledge of self and all its forms.
So,
so that's why it is Raju Vidya. This knowledge is the substratum of all worldly knowledge. It underlies all worldly knowledge.
So an example to help you understand is a vessel and water. Water can be sansaric, but water can only show up in the vessel. So this is a substratum. This is the knowledge that hosts all the other knowledge. But if you become one with the vessel, then you'll never have to worry about the vessel being empty or full or dirty water or less water because you've become one with the vessel.
And the other words that are typically used to explain this difference is that the self-knowledge or this Raj Vidya is absolute knowledge. It is eternal. It never changes. Once you've acquired it, there is nothing else that is left to acquire. It isn't as if like you constantly have to keep up with the changes in it. It is eternal. It is absolute. You acquire it once, you've acquired it forever. Whereas the worldly knowledge is relative and is constantly transient and changing and evolving. So you're constantly putting more and more effort behind it to acquire more and more and more of it. There's no end to it.
And so, again, a step back. All of us are constantly chasing knowledge because we think it would help us be more productive, it will help us achieve our goals, it will make us happy. So we're constantly looking and chasing for knowledge, right? I want to see the latest share price, stock market trends. I want to perfect my own skills so that I can go do it better, right? But all of that sansaric knowledge if you are a lawyer, for example, you have to practice that knowledge to make use of it, right? And so there is a necessary element of distinction between that knowledge and you. And that is very important for you to understand, because we operate with Gyan, but we actually identify with our knowledge, but we're actually identifying with Sansara, right? So we're constantly chasing happiness in the form of knowledge. With self-knowledge, as Tuhina mentioned, when you learn this knowledge, when you get this Gyan, you automatically become the Gyan and you eradicate all suffering from life, because there is nothing else left for you to chase. All the other knowledge shows up within this knowledge. This is your self-knowledge. Okay. The second part of this chapter name is Raja Guhya, which is the king of all secrets. Right? So Bhagavanji is saying in this chapter, I will reveal to you the greatest secret.
Greatest open secret. And that is why it is the greatest secret. The best secrets are one that are out there in the open for everyone to see,
But
and
no one
nobody
knows.
ever sees them. So it is the greatest secret because it is open for everyone. It is in front of your eyes at all times and you don't see it.
Now, why don't we see it? It comes back to my first point. We don't see it because we don't have the right tools to perceive that information. We are relying on our senses to perceive that information, but this is information that we need to experience. And that is where all our practice comes from. Right? So the greatest secret is that this is an open secret. Everybody can see it,
In plain view.
but to perceive it, you need to work on your self-knowledge. And the moment you do, you will see the way the world works. You will see me everywhere.
Emphasizing this point, the Lord says,
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan
Idam tu te guhyatamam
Idam tu te guhyatamam
Pravakshamyanya suyave
Pravakshamyanya suyate
Pravakshamyanya suyave
Pravakshamanya suyave
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Yajñatva Moksha Se Shubhat.
Yajñatva Moksha Se Shubhat.
Idam is this, tu, tujhe, you. Guhyatamam, very secretive, the most secretive. Pravakshyam is I will tell you completely. Ansuyave is a devotee who does not doubt, a devotee who does not have dosh drishti, one who does not find cavil. Jnanam is through Gyan, and Vigyan Sahit with Vigyan. So Gyan and Vigyan together. Yaj Gyatva, knowing which. Moksha Se Ashubhat. Moksha Se is with moksha, Ashubhat. Freed with moksha from what? From Ashubhat. What is Ashubhat? World which is full of Ashubh. And what is this Ashubh referring to? World which is full of sadness, which is full of sorrow, which is full of bondage.
The Lord said, to you who does not cavil, I shall speak of the highest abstract science, which gives direct and total perception, and by knowing which you shall achieve freedom from the sorrows of life. Realization easy with the Lord's grace.
Second Bhagyashree. Okay, so here one of the big things that we need to now start to transform in ourselves is the definition of the word Shubh and Ashubh. Generally, the word Shubh for a sansaric person has a very different connotation. Getting wealth, material wealth is shubh, right? Getting fame, getting people saying good things about you is shubh. Everything else is become ashubh, right? I don't get wealth. Somebody takes away wealth from me. Somebody is saying something negative about me. This is all ashubh, right? Those are that's how we use the words. But for a yogi, if we use our lives in accordance with dharma, then, and we are always staying connected to the Lord, then anything that helps me get connected to Him more strongly is shubh. Anything that gets in the way of my connection with the Lord, anything that takes me away from the Lord is ashubh. Okay? And that is a big change that we need to make in our lives. Sometimes you would start to realize is that if you observe, you may realize that when difficult times come, we tend to remember Lord a lot more. And during good times, it's easy for us to forget Him. It's easy for us to let go of our sadhana, because we're going with the flow. In that case, when good times come, it's actually ashubh for us because it is taking me away from Lord. And the bad times are actually very good for me because that's the only time I'm actually staying connected with the Lord. So I'm actually making great progress towards my ultimate welfare. Kunti, when after the Mahabharat, the entire war was over, and Krishna, when he was about to leave for Dwarka, and everyone was praying to him, Kunti at that moment had asked him of only one thing. She told him that I don't want to, I want to make sure that, there's always some or the other Vipda around me. Because if there is a Vipada around me, if there is a problem around me, if there are concerns and issues around me, if I have difficult times around me, I'm always remembering you. So please make sure that my life has some or the other concern at all times, so that I can use that as a medium to stay connected to you.
There's also bhajan in this, no? That I have sung.
Which one?
There's a bhajan, right? That Krishna
Bhajan.
there is a bhajan that says that don't give me the, don't. No, with them, still having it. Okay, why don't you sit and finish your cursive writing in the meantime? Then after 30 minutes in class, we can do. I'll take it.
Okay, so sorry, I got distracted. Shubh and Ashubh, right? Yeah, so Shubh and Ashubh. So our definitions of Shubh and Ashubh have to change. And in this first shloka, Bhagwanji is actually referring to the world as Ashubh. Okay, because it's full of sorrow. That's not typically how we look at it. And now as a yogi, we will start to see how our life, how our choices, how the way we show up in life will start to look very, very different from the way a sansaric person lives his life. In fact, there is one shlok where he says that the way a yogi looks at life, the way he lives life, the choices a yogi makes in his life are and the way the same experience is being created by a sansaric person, the difference between the two is as different as between day and night. What seems like day to a sansaric person is like night to a yogi. And conversely, whatever seems like day, whatever seems like the right choice to a yogi will feel like a very poor choice to a sansaric person. So the difference is going to become very, very stark as we go forward. And this is a change that we will have to be conscious of. There are some changes that we will need to make on our own in a conscious way, and other changes will happen automatically. Okay, but we need to be aware of them. So Shubh and Ashubh, the definition of Shubh and Ashubh is very, very important. We have to really start holding ourselves, holding our tongue when we use the words in our lives, because words are a reflection of our thoughts, and our thoughts is where everything is created. We create the world around us with the thoughts we have. So be very cognizant of the speech we use. Bhagwan Saraswati sits, right, or at our tongue. So be very careful of the speech we use. As soon as we speak, it's Bhagwan Saraswati speaking. And as she speaks, she will say Tathastu. So be careful of what you say. And what you say is only a reflection of what you think. So be careful of what you think in the first place. You will create that reality in your life. Okay. Let's read.
Realization easy with the Lord's grace. The matter of direct perception of reality and also that of the total perception of his manifestation in different forms is extremely enigmatic. Persons who are dazzled by the glare of worldly phenomena generally think that perhaps the aim of human life is to procure maximum worldly enjoyment. Thinking self-realization to be something very complex and difficult to achieve, they give up any idea to attain it. Contrary to the prevalent notion, the Lord gives the assurance in this shloka that with some attention, this apparently enigmatic subject becomes easy to comprehend with his grace. But he lays down two requisites, on the fulfillment of which the subject would become easy to comprehend. Two necessary requisites for realization. The first requisite is that the mind should be totally absorbed in devotion to the Lord. For this, a feeling of deep reverence for the Lord, along with complete faith in his power, is essential. The second condition is that the tendency to find fault in his dispensation should be completely given up. If these two requirements are met by an aspirant, the Lord assures that this extremely intricate subject would become easy to comprehend.
So, can anyone from the class help explain the meaning of direct perception and total perception? Well, let's start with direct perception.
Chapter 7. Hint, hint.
Anyone who want to give it a try? Okay, so direct perception is the
Direct perception and total perception was the title of our chapter 7. Entire chapter 7 was about understanding direct perception and total perception. So direct perception is Gyan and total perception is Vigyan, knowledge and its practical counterpart, actual experiment in the world, right? So knowledge, the direct perception is the knowledge of understanding that Bhagwanji is the root cause of everything, that he is the causal matter of everything in this world. And a constant example we used to understand this was the fact that seed, for example, when you see a tree, you don't see a seed inside it, right? But where has that tree come from? It has emanated from the seed. Seed is the cause of a tree. So direct perception is the knowledge that the seed is the cause of that tree. Total perception or Vigyan is being able to see it. When you see the leaves, the fruits, the branches, the trunk, in all of that, you perceive the seed as well. Okay, that is Vigyan. Being able to see Bhagwanji as the causal matter, even when that cause is not apparent. And then he gave us several other examples to understand that. For example, he told us fluidity in water is the essence of him. It is the essential quality. Any essential quality in this world is representative of him in that matter. That is the Vigyan part of it. Gyan is knowing that he's at the cause of everything in this world, and Vigyan is the perception of it, being able to see it. So the light or the heat of fire comes from Lord. Lord sits in fire as the cause of it through heat, through light. The brilliance, the effulgence of sun is him. The Sheetal Chandni, that the effulgence of the moon is him. The virility of human beings is him, right? So he gave us all of these examples so that we can understand that essential quality of everything around us is him. Causal matter, right? There he is not apparent. In that we are able to perceive him. That was the essence of chapter 7.
So direct perception essentially is the internal divinity within us, and total perception is the external manifestation of divinity. Right? So you have total perception when you can see divinity all around you, and you have direct perception when you are in touch with your internal divinity. Right? That's the core essence. The other point that I wanted to say, so in what Bhagwanji is here highlighting is he doesn't want our blind faith, right? He's not saying do things blindly, follow X, Y, Z, and it'll happen. But like with any knowledge that you begin to acquire, you need to, he's asking for Shraddha. He's asking for
not Andhashraddha,
not blind faith, but he's asking for faith, right? It's the same thing that we apply to worldly knowledge. If a child does not have any faith that his education does not lead to him living a better life, that child's relationship with education and academics changes completely. Versus a child who says, you know what, I trust my parents, I trust that this will be good for me, and they do their math and they do their work assiduously, they aspire for perfection, they don't get 100 and 100, but that person will automatically have greater ability of control and application of that knowledge, right?
Another important thing here is to take Abhinav's example forward. Shraddha, but not Andhashraddha, right? Faith, but not blind faith. The understanding is that with that faith will come the knowledge. And as knowledge increases, your faith will also increase. They are going to be on a virtuous cycle. So start with faith, but know that that faith will lead to knowledge. And how will that lead to knowledge? Experimentation. You have to experiment. So you learn your chemistry rules, you learn your mathematics rules, you learn everything, you learn physics, and then go out and experiment in the world. And see that that experiment is exactly what the knowledge has been given to you. Your experience must be in line with the rules, the principles you've been taught in the class. But if your experience of an experiment is not in line with what you read, then you have to come back and you have to ask what went wrong. My experience was not in line. My experiment did not give me the result. You remember when we used to do our physics or chemistry experiments, they were not always in line with, there was a result, it was given, right? So there's that entire experiment, step, result. Did you always get those results? We did not. You are trying to create a crystal. You've been told that this is exactly the way you're supposed to follow these lists. And at the end, this is a beautiful crystal that will emerge. Did you always get that crystal? As far as we were concerned, we did the experiment perfectly. And you're like, well, no crystal, nothing. And then what happens? There are two ways after that. One is one who will kavil, one who has a dosh drishti will come back and say, okay, scrap. Teacher doesn't know anything. The lab guy doesn't know anything. This is all wrong. It is not true. You don't get this. This is dosh drishti. The other person says, oh, I trust the knowledge is correct. I trust that this experiment is correct. I am supposed to get that crystal. I didn't get it. What did I do wrong? What can I do better? And then go back and check every single step and say, okay, did I do this correctly? Did I get the temperature exactly correct? Did I add the ingredients? Did I add the salt correctly? Did I move the thing too much? And that is what caused the entire experiment to fail. You go through every single step to see where it's just one small step you do wrong and your result will not follow through. So you become more and more exacting as you start to practice. And with that practice, you learn what can go wrong. You learn those 200 things that you can do wrong. And from that, your knowledge and your knowledge improves. It increases. And once you have distilled it correctly, you have done the experiment correctly, now you know. Now your faith will turn to knowing. Now you don't just believe that if these things are done, you will get a crystal. You actually know that a crystal will emerge. And imagine yourself talking to a junior when you have a belief in an experiment versus when you know an experiment through an experiment that crystal will emerge. And you also know in how many ways it can go wrong and the crystal will not emerge. Can you imagine yourself talking to a junior and explaining the process to them? How different it will be once you have the belief and when you actually know, and that belief is no longer belief. You actually know through experiential knowledge. That is what is Gita. Gita says first have faith. Second, go ahead and experiment. But do not keep the dosh drishti. Do not doubt these principles. Experiment, fail, come back, swadhyay, nidhi dhyasan, manan. All of these are experiments that we do in our daily life with these principles. And then ask ourselves, why did I not create the right outcome? What's going on? What am I doing wrong? What can I do better? And with that knowledge, once that belief translates into actually knowing, is when that once you know, as we now understand, once you know the self-knowledge, it will become you. You won't just have the knowledge of crystal. It's like you becoming the crystal. That is the big difference.
So the other point to remember is, why do you need Shraddha? Is because the knowledge that we are trying to study is not something we can perceive through eyes, ears, mouth. So for you to be able to access that knowledge, there are things you will logically not understand. You will try and read it 10 times. It's easy for you to find a fault and then say, ye bekar hai. Right? It's very easy to do that. But what Bhagwanji is saying, I need you to have Shraddha. I need you to have faith, because this is knowledge that is universal and it is timeless. It has stood the test of time. But for you to access, experience its power, you have to have Shraddha. Work with that faith. So when you do experience it, you will feel its full force.
All the ills of the world warded off by direct and total perception. Another important observation made by the Lord is that on comprehending this subject, all the ills and sufferings of the world are totally eliminated. For example, the rays of the sun create an illusion of water in the desert, and a thirsty person would be tempted to run towards it for quenching thirst. If the person could be told that the thirst would not be quenched by the water seen in the mirage, and that the stream of cold water was somewhere else, it would lead to great relief. Similarly, realization of this perception is greatly helpful in transcending worldly sufferings and attaining everlasting peace.
Then this I think we've covered. Right.
So, Smita, will you read for us?
Sure. But the difficulty is that, in spite of all efforts to the contrary, a person afflicted by suffering and distress in life is not likely to believe easily that the way to end the suffering and achieve everlasting peace could be so simple. Giving a categorical assurance, the Lord says,
Before we read the shloka, Now, why is it that a person who is afflicted by suffering and distress in life is not likely to believe it? Any thoughts? Why would he not believe it? If you're trying to tell him, dude, like, there is a simple way out of your sufferings.
Yeah, we are too consumed in our own suffering to kind of believe that there is something, and as it all says, we try to kind of question why it is happening to us. So we get to the basic primal nature of our self as to why it happens, and it's too much to handle all those emotions that everybody goes through.
Very nice, Mita. Correct. So you're absolutely right. Putting it another way, when a person is going through stress, when a person is going through distress, what happens is that whatever is inside of you, you resort back to your habits. This is no time to learn. You will resort to your habits, and if your habitual nature is to question, your habitual nature is to lament, your habitual nature is to go back to your your, like, I want to try and preserve myself, that is what you will go to. That is no time to learn anything new. That is no time to build habits because you're already under stress. The time to build habits is in peacetime. You don't teach an army new warfare or new tactics on the battleground. You teach them this in exercises that are conducted during peacetime. And in wartime, they will just do what they have learned. There are no new learnings. That is why people, when they are afflicted by suffering, by their distress, they do not believe this because there's no time to learn. And that is why during this time, which is peace for us, this is peace time for us. We have to focus on our swadhyay. Unfortunately, what we do is when there is peace time, we forget Lord completely. We remember him only during the tough times. And then go back and say, hey, I asked Bhagwan Ji for A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and he did not give me this. And like, so there is no God. Gita doesn't say that, you go pray to Bhagwan Ji and you pray to him to give you whatever and he will give you that. Gita says he will look out for you and he will give you that which is for your best benefit. Just like a parent will not necessarily give in to child's every women fancy. They will give in to whatever he asks, things that are correct for him, and but those that are actually bad for him, they will never give in for that. Ro ke mar jaya bacha. You're not going to give it to him, right? So that is exactly the case with us as well. If we are asking for wrong things in our life, he will not give it to us because that is not for our ultimate welfare. Okay. So have faith and then use your peace time to practice, to do your swadhyay, nam jap, manan, nidhi dhyasan, to make sure that these practices through our abhyas yog become a second nature so that you don't have to think about it. Nam jap should not be a conscious choice any longer. It should be something that happens constantly. The ability to connect to the divine in someone else. When we do namaste, who are we doing namaste to? We are doing naman from my divinity to your divinity. That is what we are doing naman to. So then that it doesn't matter how we perceive that person, whether that perception from whether that perception is to a teacher in a material world, or whether that perception is that of what you may call your adversity or your competitor. It doesn't matter. You will that fact that you're connecting to a divinity in a person should become a second nature, but that will only happen if you're practicing on a daily basis, which will only happen through manan and nidhi dhyasan. Yeah?
So there's one other thing that I think I should bring up here, is one difference between the knowledge, sansaric knowledge, and this knowledge. I think I've explained sansaric knowledge in detail. One element of this knowledge is that this knowledge resides within us. It is not outside. Everything outside, like this book, is just a temporary tool. for us to become aware of the knowledge inside. Now, how do you become aware of something inside of you? Will that happen by reading more outside? No. Will that happen by attending more classes? अरे एक गीता क्लास नहीं, हमें 3 गीता क्लास करनी चाहिए. Will that happen by talking to more people about it? The only way it will happen is by you working on changing your own perception, realigning your perception. And when you realign your perception from sansar to divinity, that knowledge will become apparent and you will become that knowledge effortlessly.
And again, don't take what Abhinav said to mean that, oh, you should only attend one class, or you cannot attend 3 classes, or people who are attending 3 classes, why are they attending 3 classes, right? The purpose is that, yeah, I mean, do all those things by all means, do as much as you can. Why? Because the space that we are in, we need constant reminders. And if you think that you need 3 reminders during the week because you are not doing a swadhyaya or whatever, or you're getting it from different sources in different ways, please go ahead and do it. But end of the day, if all you're doing is attending those classes and not coming back to implement them, then whether you attend 1, whether you attend 7 classes a day, a week, it is of no use. It's of no consequence. It is much better to attend 1 class, but implement it every single day than to attend 7 classes and not attend any day. I think that's the major thing that he's trying to bring out. Okay. Our effort cannot be replaced by anything else.
Any questions so far before we go further? All right. Okay.
Do you want to do Shloka 2 then?
लंबा है, इसलिए मैं पूछ रहा था कोई प्रश्न नहीं.
I think let's do Shloka 2, 3 and all together.
ठीक.
Yes, we'll have to probably close it out like halfway, or we won't explain it properly then.
ठीक है, and this has been a big information download. And
Chapter 9 is going to be a very nice chapter. I say that about every chapter, I think. They all are so much fun and so much more to learn from. Okay, so we'll probably close the class.
Yeah.
Then will you do the closing shlokas as well for us?
Yes. ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु, सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्. ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मा अमृतङ्गमय. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.